Today, we're going to talk about Bruno. Under pressure. I'm trying to throw it for a loop every time. Today, we are going to talk about what's going on in the markets, what's going on in crypto, the amount of volatility, the amount of risk that is still on the table.
We're going to talk trash because it's not good out
We're
there.
We're going to talk stress. We're going to talk about the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And we're going to show you how we learned our lessons.
Yeah.
And ways that you can benefit from that. And you don't want to feel like this in retirement.
Right.
You don't want to have
from
to
our mistakes.
You don't want to have to get up and see what the S&P 500 futures are when you're 72 and you'd rather go out and play golf.
Yeah.
Or knit or tutor children, whatever it may be. I'm Mark McKay.
And I'm Marcy McKay. And we're not 72.
Hopefully we will be. Welcome to Sage Smart Solutions. Please join us weekly as we learn new and exciting ways to provide tax-free income and protect your assets. I said that backwards, but...
So rewind to 2001.
2000, okay. So we want to give you a little bit of story about how we got involved with safe assets, with safe leverage. And I'd been running an investment department for a bank in Central Texas and came back to the Panhandle to start the investment department, a big privately owned bank here. And when our son was about one, so 2001,
right.
I went out on my own, kind of. I went to work. I partnered with some attorneys, some estate planning attorneys and some CPAs, and I really began focusing on more safe strategies, tax considerate planning, and also learned about some opportunities that are out there that aren't being presented at halftime of the Super Bowl or
MSNBC, Squawk Box.
Yeah, to your average investor. And but what I did is when I left, a lot of my clients came with me. And so in doing that, a lot of them, transferred assets to cash. That turned out to be real fortunate because as we were trying to say, okay, let's go find out what our next move is, the world fell apart. And we factored that into it. I felt that what the NASDAQ had done in 98 and 99 were just a precursor of what was going to happen. And that when that bubble burst, it was really going to be unpleasant.
So was that 9/11? That sent everything?
Well,
or was there a crash before
the
that?
tech bubble had burst when 9/11 hit.
Okay.
It was just...
We had a 1-year-old, so I was sleep deprived.
She was sleep deprived. But I left my 401k with this employer. And, this is the first time I'd ever had 6 figures with my name on a piece of paper on it.
Right.
And we're going about setting up our new business and working with these new partnerships and developing these relationships. And I'm like, okay, like a lot of people, I'll worry about my 401k later.
We'll take care of it later.
I'm going to take care of my clients. And I started getting these statements, and we became the cliche. And depending how old you are, you may or may not remember this, but it was a big problem in 99, 2000, 2001. People were afraid to open their statements.
Yeah.
Now, for those of you who are millennials or younger, statements were pieces of paper that were mailed. That's so condescending. I apologize. But most people back then would probably check their statement, their 401k. Yeah, they probably didn't even open those statements, but they go online and check it every now and then. We did have some limit. We'd have to dial up and. That was my dial-up modem.
I hear
it was
the
bad,
dial-up. But I do remember that time period that on one hand, you were so proud that you had taken care of your clients who had transferred over with you, but we kept kind of, we'll take care of us, we'll take care of us, just
that mental stress,
right.
you kind of live that pain twice because
right.
you're thinking, oh, I know it's going to hurt, it's going to
yeah.
and then you open that and you're like, oh, my 152 is now 78.
Right. I mean, it did.
And everything went down. It didn't matter. It didn't get cut quite in half, but it went down about 40%.
Yeah.
And one thing I was starting to realize, because I no longer worked at that job, I thought, okay, this is labor that I gave these people that evaporated.
Right.
That money represented exchange for my labor, for my time, for my family's sacrifices. and it went away. And so we knew that we had to start planning and look for safer ways. And it's how we came upon the SAGE method, using safe. We looked at what are some options, what characteristics of the ideal investment are we looking for? Guess what our number one criteria was, given, that we were smack dab. What Marcy's talking about, when the tech bubble burst, everybody said the most dangerous words investing. This time it's different.
Right.
And because the internet was going to change the game. And it did, but we are still subject to the laws of supply and demand and market hysteria and investor, frenzy.
Right.
What I don't remember if it was Alan Greenspan that called it over-rational exuberance.
Right.
But so our number one criteria was crash proof.
Yeah.
We didn't want to do this again.
Right.
And because of that, we sat out the crash of 2008. I don't know why my hair is gray and thinning, but it's not because of the crash of 2008 or what crypto did for the last 4 months. So,
but it was a painful lesson, because it was well over $150,000 that we had lost 40%, and so it was a very painful lesson.
Well, and it was one of those you were cringing as you opened. You thought, okay, is it gonna be 4 figures or gonna be 5 this segment period?
Right.
And you could kind of have an idea, because as much as these places preach diversification,
right.
And I had access to as much information as was available out there in choosing my funds.
Right, back in 2001.
But the problem with picking mutual funds, especially when it comes to retirement planning. I was just looking, if you had invested in the S&P 500, no fees in 1999 until now, your return would be about 7%.
Right.
Which is not bad.
Right.
Except back then, the talking heads were saying, I went to a bookstore next to my office, and there was a big financial planning book by Dave Ramsey, and it was a very thorough book. But for the planning feature of it, he said use a default rate, for aggressive, use 18%.
Right.
For middle of the road, use 15%.
Yeah.
And he's since backed off those numbers and doesn't reference those anymore, but he talks about the 12% return. So let's say you planned in 1999 with this big serious guy who, he talks mean to people who aren't as knowledgeable as him, so he's got to be really knowledgeable. And you did your plan, you paid off your debt, you paid yourself first. You did all these steps, but where he said the investment side of it, just put it in here, and the stupidest thing you could do would be pull it out when it's down, unless it goes down even more, and then,
right. Right.
So that's speculation. That's what they're recommending, but they were using numbers with calculators of 18%.
Yep.
Now they backed off of that after the crash of 2001, 2008. And they're going with 12%.
Right.
And you can find some periods where the S&P 500 makes 12%.
Right, but you can also
just barely. And there aren't any there are only a handful of mutual fund managers that outperform the S&P 500. But the key here is, anytime you look at those statements or any kind of performance numbers, past performance is no guarantee of future results.
Right.
So when they say, oh, well, there's plenty that have done 12% for 30 years. Do they have the same fund manager? Are the markets still the same? What they did for the past 30 years is not
impressive.
A good plan. Well, no, it could be impressive. I can go find one impressive, right. But it doesn't mean it's going to be impressive.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean that any of the same people who had the impressive return, because chances are they're running their own boutique hedge fund, making $3 billion a year personally and not having to share it with the Fidelities and the growth companies of America or, whoever's got
So we learned from personal experience.
So
we wanted something crash
proof. The number one feature we were looking for is crash proof.
Right.
Number two, we needed decent rate of returns.
Yep.
And along the way, that has meant different things because at that time, you could go out into a fixed rate product and get a decent rate of return. But interest rates just fell for the next 20 years essentially.
Right.
And so we had to look for new strategies. That's why this safe leverage strategy using cash value life insurance, where we maximize the cash value. And I don't want to just say, okay, well, this is infinite banking is what you need, or be your own bank, because there are great programs that are applied correctly for the right people, and there are total garbage ones that were designed specifically to maximize the commission to the agent, to the broker, to the financial planner. I've sat in a presentation by somebody who put together a plan. I don't remember the specifics of it, but I could not wrap my head. I was like, why would you have a level death benefit with this particular strategy? And the only thing, and somebody else came up to me and said, because it gives him 27% more commission.
Right.
But as we, kept building up these tax deferred accounts, we realized what a mistake that was.
Right.
That with the $32 trillion debt in this country, taxes are going to be higher in the future. Volatility in the stock markets is going to be higher in the future. Returns from the stock market are going to be lower in the future. So we decided that we needed, and I went kicking and screaming into this.
Yeah.
Because I kind of had the rebellious kid that, the boring guy who made the off-color jokes, but always had the giant Rolex and the big car or whatever, had 90% of his assets in cash value life insurance, which I could not wrap my head around. And then I realized that there are some very sophisticated planning strategies involving that. At the time I didn't have the money. Nobody cared to share those strategies with me, but they allow you to get a double-digit rate of return that can provide a very attractive tax-free income with some guarantees. Unlike, how much of your stock market portfolio is guaranteed to provide you with tax-free income in retirement? If you've got some of your stock portfolio in a Roth, great. It can provide tax-free income. But how? You've got to go sell it.
Yeah.
And if you look at, even if you've got it in the tax-free account, they're saying that the 4% rule applies. Can you live on 4% of where your portfolios are? And knock 40% off your portfolio for taxes before you apply that number.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you want to be aggressive, knock 30%. But if you think taxes are going down in the future, think again.
Good luck.
The math is not there.
Right.
So we'll pick this up on another segment, and we will talk about some of the other criteria that we look for in the ideal investment for retirement, especially in a rising interest rate environment, in an environment where the stock market volatility is ridiculous. Inflation, the rate of inflation is at a 40-year high, and taxes are going to go up.
Yeah.
So
protect yourself.
Click
It's
below
scary out there.
the Watch Our Masterclass. We will send you a link. It's a 40-minute video that will break it down, what we're talking about, and then after that, set an appointment. We'll get a little bit of information from you, put together some actual ideas that you can implement. We can implement them for you.
And just see if it's a good fit.
And see if it's a good fit. But let us show you what we're talking about, and then we can show you examples using your situation, and you can decide whether a plan that takes Uncle Sam, the greedy fat cats of Wall Street, and other bad people out of your retirement plans.
But just the unknown. I mean, a war can pop up halfway across the world that sends the stock market into a tailspin. Things that just none of us can control, and that's what I feel like we learned.
And if you've got a good, solid core that you say, okay, I made this one $50,000 move when I was 30, and I now know that I'm going to have XYZ in tax-free income. Well, then, when there's a war and the market goes down 50%, you'll have the comfort of knowing that you could go out and maybe see if you can make a home run because you've got your retirement taken care of. Let us put together a plan for you.
Dun-dun-dun.